Now, according to Maori legend, the first Maori to arrive in New Zealand was Kupe, around about 1325 to 1350 AD, and how he arrived is a bit of a guess, but probably he had a canoe with an outrigger and a sail. And we know that the Maoris brought with them their belief that Maui was their god, and hence the name Maori today, and many of them believe that they are the children of Maui. And we know that all the way from places like Hawaii and Tahiti down here to New Zealand, that these people were practicing cannibalism. And when the white Europeans came in contact with the Maoris, they regarded them as savages because of their practice of cannibalism in particular. And we know that when the white people came here, they brought with them their muskets, and the Maoris began to use these muskets to shoot each other. And Hongi Hika went all the way back to England and brought back with him 200 muskets, and this began the musket wars here in New Zealand. And so let's have a listen now to Monica Matamua and what she has to say about the pre-European history of the Maori.
Well, Kupe described them as a fair nation of people. Everywhere he went, they were fair-skinned people. Even Maori are aware, even the government is aware. The writings of the likes of Kupe, when he came here, the land was already populated throughout New Zealand, wherever he went. And then when Toi Kairako came over from Rarotonga on the Te Paipai ki Rarotonga, he described the place as being populated too. And Toi did describe them as being very fair. Or he called them as being white actually. And they had red hair and green eyes. Toi came here looking for his grandson, Whatonga. And his first visit was at Auckland, and they told him that his grandson had passed through there years before. So he sailed on and he landed at Whakatane. And when he stopped there was already tribes living there. And there were two different tribes. There was a dark race and the Ngāti Hotu people. And only the Ngāti Hotu people fed them because they were starving. And on board his ship he had two sisters. These two sisters were Hinawai sisters. And these sisters married the two Ngāti Hotu chiefs living there. And today that is our tribe.
This was reiterated by Ngāpuhi leader David Rankin, who is quoted as saying, "Who were those red-headed, fair-skinned people who greeted our walkers? We can't deny our oral history. If we try to as Maori, we're actually denying our history."
There is another tribe on the east coast, which is the Ngāti Parau from East Cape. And I remember I knew quite a few Ngāti Parau when I was in Wellington. And I know that there are some Ngāti Parau that are fairly fair-skinned, some even freckled, and they have red hair.
Yeah, many of them are Ngāti Hotu who were married from Ruaputuhanga. She was of Whanganui descent and she was of Ngāti Hotu. And a lot of the people of Maniapoto and Whanganui come from her. Yeah, and I can trace my lineage back to her anyway.
It appears there were many tribes descended from these light-haired people with green eyes, but despite their different genetic makeup, the Waitaha and the Ngāti Hotu have contributed dynamically to Maori culture and have formed the foundation of many tribes today.
Well, I know the Ngāti Hotu people, they were a peaceful people. They didn't know war and fighting until the Maoris arrived.
Waitaha believed to take the life of another was to destroy your own. That's where they began, that was their baseline.
But between Taupo and Ruapehu, 3,000 Ngāti Hotu were killed by two whareto. And there were 600 killed here in Taumaranui by the Maniapoto people. And that was the last cannibal feast of New Zealand. It was held here at the Cherry Grove, and 600 Ngāti Hotu perished. And after the Battle of Te Pōrere, over Te Kōti, the Crown ordered anyone that was with Te Kōti were to be beheaded. So they headed back into the rugged parts of the Taurewa, And they were the last survivors. This picture of my grandmother, Te Oti Mihi Terina, was one of the 5 survivors of the Taurewa forest in the year of 1860.
And so before the time that the white people began to revisit these shores here in New Zealand, it appears that the population of the Petu Paiarahi was beginning to dwindle as a result of violent confrontations with the Maoris. And when you look at the relics found around the coastlines here in New Zealand, you see that the Portuguese and Spanish have been here, and perhaps even the Chinese and the Phoenicians, along with the Greeks and the Celts. And the Dutch arrived here in 1642 when Abel Tasman discovered the top of the South Island, and he was a cartographer who mapped parts of Tasmania and also New Zealand, and then went home again and came back and mapped parts of Papua New Guinea and Australia. And in 1769 the English arrived here with Captain Cook when he discovered the East Cape of New Zealand, and he was a cartographer who mapped all of New Zealand. And after this period the influx of white people began again, and by 1835 the northern chiefs aligned with Busby, and they formed an alliance and they declared independence and created their own flag of independence.
In 1830, a Kiwi trading ship called the Sir George Murray arrived in Sydney Harbour. She was carrying flax and timber, but missing something important, a flag to say where she came from. She was immediately impounded, and so began the history of the New Zealand flag. She sat there for quite some time, which didn't sit well with the 2 prominent Maori chieftains on board. This led James Busby, a British representative living in Waitangi, to assemble 25 rangatira at his farm to choose our first flag. From 3 designs, they chose the United Tribes of New Zealand flag.
At the beginning of the 19th century, there is frequent contact between Maori and foreign whalers, sealers, traders and missionaries. Natural resources such as trees for shipbuilding are traded. Minor disagreements and conflict occur. Small groups of Europeans are the guests of the 100,000 plus Maori population. Early contact is conducted largely on the Maori's terms. By 1830, over 1,000 European ships are visiting New Zealand each year. Lawlessness prevails. Sailors, escaped convicts and adventurers from the colony of New South Wales are difficult to control.
There was trade taking place, there were people arriving, there was whaling and sealing. And so the British didn't really feel the need for anything in particular. In a sense, they were forced into it by concerns raised by Maori chiefs about the behaviour of principally British subjects in Aotearoa, and the need for some sort of control and discipline.
Maori and British concerns grow that the French want to annex New Zealand. 13 Maori northern chiefs petition King William IV for protection. The Crown promises protection. During the 1830s, British missionaries and humanitarians pressure the Crown to save the Maori from the same devastating effects that European colonisation and imperialism has had upon the indigenous cultures in Africa, Australia and the Pacific.
There was a movement within Britain to acknowledge and to regret the very harmful effects that that British occupation, British colonial authority had in some other countries. They could see the results. In Australia, for example, the condition of Aboriginal people around settlements like Port Jackson, Sydney, were very distressing.
Missionaries in New Zealand also discourage land sales by purchasing it and acting as trustees to local tribes. James Busby is appointed first official British resident to New Zealand. He's given little support to enforce his authority. The Maori have an economic need for nationhood.
With Maori trading, particularly with New South Wales, they had ships, they were trading quite extensively back and forth. But the problem was Aotearoa New Zealand as a nation did not exist. And under British maritime law of the day, in order to trade, a ship needed to have Firstly, a flag, to sail under a flag, and secondly, to have a ship's register.
With no official authorisation, James Busby creates the Declaration of Independence of New Zealand. Written in Maori, it is signed by 34 northern chiefs. More chiefs from further south sign over the next 4 years. The chiefs see this as an expression of Maori nationhood. The Maori interpret this as a Crown guarantee of independence. Busby and other British see it as a step toward making New Zealand a British possession. Declaration is officially acknowledged by the King in 1836.